Welcome to Gurgle, a bite-sized podcast from the creators of Ad Nauseam. Looking to whet your appetite for the classics? Gurgle will tickle your taste buds and leave you wanting more. And now, from the vomitorium, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
All right, Jeff. Well, we are back at it.
Yes, another gurgle.
A gurgle.
After many, many years.
It has been a long time
Yes.
since we gurgled. I think, in fact, it was October 18, 2022. 3 years.
3 years.
At that point, we dealt with the Palladium, which was a kind of Athena-based thing.
Yeah.
So why are we gurgling today?
Well, we're gurgling. Well, it's a matter of practicality.
Okay.
We want to have some stuff out there for our audience to listen to. You are soon heading off on a fairly long sojourn.
That's correct.
Out of the country, and so we want to have some stuff for our audience while you are gone.
That's right. And we really love that intro, right? As read by the voice of Ad Nauseam, Brian D.
Yeah, it's great.
So we're going to gurgle with that.
Right. But we have this really interesting article. As I understand it, the lovely Mrs. Noe sent this to you.
Yes, indeed, she did.
And it is, well, what's the title here? This is from Science Magazine.
Yes, it's from science.org, in fact. I think we'll include the link in the show notes if someone wants to be able to read it themselves. The title is, Your Native Tongue Holds a Special Place in Your Brain, Even If You Speak 10 Languages.
Man, yeah.
And then the subtitle?
Neuroimaging reveals how polyglots' brains respond to both familiar and unfamiliar languages.
Interesting. So this is by one Natalia Mesa, and it was published the 3rd of February, 2023. So not long after we gurgled our last.
That's right.
So here we are back for a bite-sized portion of the classics.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it, Jeff. And how does Ms. Mesa set up the story here?
She writes, most people will learn one or two languages in their lives, but Vaughn Smith, a 47-year-old carpet cleaner from Washington, D.C., speaks 24.
Yes.
Smith is a hyper-polyglot, a rare individual who speaks more than 10 languages.
Isn't that phenomenal?
That's phenomenal.
The funny part about this story is that I think it breaks a lot of people's preconceptions, right?
Yeah.
When we get to this part, Vaughn Smith, 47-year-old, makes sense. Carpet cleaner? Mm-hmm. People tend to have an association of, I guess they would say, the number of languages one can speak with high intellect.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that correlates, but if it did, one also does not typically correlate high intellect with service jobs.
No.
Now, I don't have those kinds of prejudices, I don't think, but it's kind of the standard convention, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's that smart speaks so many languages, wouldn't they be working at NASA or Tesla or something like that?
Right, exactly. But I mean, in this case, I think it's a function of just how someone's brain works and absorbs. And we've on the show, we've actually talked about a hyperpolyglot, Mr. Schliemann.
Oh yes,
way back
Heinrich.
when. Yes, right. I think we mentioned that aspect of his extraordinary life. He too spoke and understood dozens of languages.
Right, and the key to his acquisition of those languages, as I well remember from, I'm not going to be able to remember the book. Carolyn Moorhead is the name that sticks, but we'll check it out later. Mm-hmm. Anyway, is that as he traveled through Europe, as he went from border to border, when he crossed into Poland on the train, he stopped speaking German and began speaking and writing only Polish.
Right. And
then on the way back, if he passed through Germany and then into France, same thing.
Exactly. And less people think that that was just another one of Schliemann's. He could his boasts that didn't turn out to be turned out to be exactly true. Right. His diaries survived, which show that he was actually a hyperpolyglot. Yeah.
And the key to his learning of the languages, we can just drop this fact, was that when he was trying to break the back of a new one, you might say, he did not expose himself to any other language than that one for an intense period of time, 6 to 7 weeks.
Yes.
So Ms. Mesa goes on and she says, in a new brain imaging study, researchers peered inside the minds of polyglots like Smith to tease out how language-specific regions in their brains respond to hearing different languages. Familiar languages elicited a stronger reaction than unfamiliar ones. They found, with one important exception, native languages which provoked relatively little brain activity. This, the authors note, suggests that there's something special about the languages we learn early in life.
Yeah. Let me just read this next paragraph too. So it says, this study, quote, contributes to our understanding of how our brain learns new things, says Augusto Buchweitz, a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of Connecticut, Storrs, who was not involved in the work. The earlier you learn something, the more your brain adapts and probably uses less resources. Now, this is what I've always heard, that if you're going to learn a language, start it early.
Right. Even if you don't do it very intensely, and you don't do it very successfully.
Yeah.
If you start early and you are consistent, right? So
Yes.
you don't have to have a lot of success early on, but there's something about the brain's adaptability.
Yes.
I like to refer to something that Plato actually said. He compared the mind to a wax tablet, the kind of wax tablet. I think I've mentioned this before, that you write on with a stylus, which has a sharpened, chiseled edge with a little soot maybe. So when you're young, the wax is incredibly soft, so it takes impressions easily. When you're very old, the wax has dried and it's hard, and so it doesn't take an impression as easily. But once you get it in there, it's nearly perfect.
Yes.
So the actual time to learn, Plato would say, is middle age, because the wax is at the perfect consistency. It's the Goldilocks moment.
Really?
Yep.
So you're telling me that now is the time to tackle Japanese?
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so say sayonara to your other activities, right? And the reason being, yes, if you were a 9-year-old, that's an ideal time to start Japanese.
Yeah.
Before the age of 10, but to make rapid progress, right?
Yeah.
Using all of your intellect, your self-discipline, wipe the chips off your chest and buckle down, right?
Right.
It's when you're in your early 50s.
Right. Now I'm curious, as to how auditory and written aspects to it kind of is involved in all of this. But
I have some theories on this, which are probably not sound.
Okay.
In very simple terms, the ear processes a greater amount of language than the eye by a huge margin.
Yeah.
And reading and speaking are very distinct kinds of skills.
Yes.
So when you're young, you can take advantage of your illiteracy, you might say, by processing massive amounts of auditory input.
Yeah.
So what does Ms. Mesa say in the next portion?
Yes, scientists have largely ignored what's going on inside the brains of polyglots, people who speak more than 5 languages, says Fedorenko, a cognitive neuroscientist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, who led the new study. Quote, there's oodles of work on individuals whose language systems are not functioning properly, she says, but almost none on people with advanced language skills. That's partly because they account for only 1% of people globally, making it difficult to find enough participants for research.
See, now I don't understand that.
What do you mean?
Well, they account for 1% of people globally. That's a lot of people.
That is.
Right?
If you do the math, right?
7 billion, that's a lot of people.
I guess maybe tracking them down and getting them together.
No, you just have to dangle a little cash out there. That would work. Or maybe an ad nauseum sticker.
Right.
Participate in the study, get a free ad nauseum sticker. All these polyglots.
Right.
5 languages or more, they're going to come out of the woodwork.
Yes. She continues, but studying this group can help linguists understand the human, quote, language network, a set of specialized brain areas located in the left frontal and temporal lobes. These areas help humans with the most basic aspect of understanding language, connecting sounds with meaning, Fedorenko says.
Okay. So do you have some memories? I doubt you have any of learning English, your mother tongue, and I don't really either. Although in a sense, I like to point out to my language learning students, you're still learning your mother tongue.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the basics of how to use it, long since learned, but you're still learning new words, new expressions, new nuances.
Yeah.
And that actually helps in the acquisition of a second language, right? If you have a more natural understanding of what it means to learn a language,
yes,
rather than thinking, well, I speak and use English perfectly. No, you don't, right? And I don't have anything new to learn. Yes, you do. Right?
Yeah.
It makes it more analogous to the process of learning another language.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you were first studying Latin and Greek and then later French and German for grad school?
I do. And what I remember and relating it to my own, mastery or attempt at mastery of English. And I think we've mentioned this on the show, is like, I never felt like I truly understood how English worked until I started to study Latin.
Right.
And I think that's kind of that, it sounds counterintuitive. It sounds backwards.
Right.
But it wasn't, because I remembered, taking English and learning how to, diagram sentences and that kind of stuff, which I hated.
Right.
And just learning kind of the grammar and, parts of speech. And it never really stuck, but it was when I started learning Latin,
right,
kind of as a backwards route. And I had this aha moment with my native tongue.
Well, I think there's 2 reasons for that. I've just run this by you, see what you think.
Yeah.
The first is that Latin and Greek teachers have a special way of teaching. I would suggest that, at least in my experience, my English grammar instructors did not. Now, they did a good job. I'm not criticizing them, but a Latin or Greek instructor has a particular way of drawing your attention to certain kinds of precise ways of using the language.
Yeah.
Also, it's a morphologically inflected language. That is, it has They both have endings that indicate word usage. So that's shining a light on structure in a way that you can't really get in English because it doesn't have cases,
right,
and so forth.
Right, yeah.
And the syntax is so different, right? Word order determines meaning in English. It doesn't determine in the other two languages, as we know.
Right, exactly.
But the second reason I think you experience that is just the highlighting of the difference between speaking and reading.
Right? Yeah, exactly right. And then you mentioned French and German.
Right.
I found my experience with English and along with Latin made French a breeze.
Absolutely. At least the vocabulary.
Yeah, and with
pronunciation, don't get me started.
Exactly. That's why I love this. The kind of the crash course I took was French for reading.
That's right.
Nobody cared how I was pronouncing it.
Yeah,
right?
Je suis exhausted.
Right.
Something like that.
And then the sister course in German, it was just cram it in just to pass the class, pass the exam. Right?
And that's kind of a shame. But
Yeah.
I did the same thing. Certainly, it isn't Schliemann's approach, which was better.
Yeah.
So Mesa continues, and she says, to find out how the brain processes 5 or more languages, Fedorenko teamed up with Saima Malik Moraleda, a graduate student at Harvard and a polyglot herself, and a team of other researchers. They scanned the brains of 25 polyglots, 16 of whom were hyperpolyglots. You got to wonder, Jeff, did the hyperpolyglots, did they flex against the other 9 regular polyglots?
Oh, they did. It was like the Dr. Seuss Sneetches.
Yeah, that's right.
The hyperpolyglots had the stars on their chest.
They got stars on theirs?
Stars, right.
Yeah, I know 19 languages. You're just coasting at 15.
Rookie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Including one who spoke more than 50 different languages.
Wow.
Now, I have to wonder, I wish I could ask Ms. Mesa about this study, because what does it mean to speak 50 different languages? Does this mean that you can order a coffee in 50 different languages? Because I could learn to do that.
Yeah,
right.
Or does it mean you could parachute them into these 50 different cultures and they'd be fine?
And nobody would notice.
Right.
Nobody could tell you're not a native Parisian or you're not a native Vietnamese.
Yeah, it would, a footnote here would be
exactly
would be useful. Yeah.
I don't know if science.org goes for footnotes.
No.
They used a brain imaging technique, says Mesa, called functional magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, which measures blood flow in the brain to map out these language networks. You ever been inside an MRI, Jeff?
No, that concept terrifies me. I'm a bit of a claustrophobe.
Oh no,
yeah.
I've been in a couple.
Have you really?
Yes.
Oh man,
not pleasant, but I made it through.
Okay.
Inside the fMRI machine, the polyglots listened to a series of 16-second long recordings in one of 8 different languages. Each recording was selected from a random chunk of the Bible, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, or the most recent episode of Ad Nauseum.
Man, fantastic.
No,
man.
I just made that up.
No, that's an interesting choice there. The Bible,
yes.
or Lewis Carroll?
I wonder why. I guess the Bible's great familiarity. It would be interesting to know. Well, it says a random chunk from the Bible. It'd be interesting to know which translations.
Yeah.
Why do you think Alice Adventures in Wonderland?
I'm blanking on why that would be a...
Well, it seems odd because you got words in there like Jabberwocky.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
No, if I got the wrong...
No, that's right. That's the... Yeah, that's from Alice.
Slithering Toves?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Gyre and Grumble in the Grabe?
No, it's by Lewis Carroll, but it is not in... It's not in...
Jabberwocky is not in that.
Is
Alice.
not
Okay.
in. Boy, we just avoided something, didn't we, from someone?
Oh my gosh, I can almost feel Will.
I wasn't going to mention his name, but I could feel it coming. Yeah. So Alice in Wonderland, strange choice, but there you have it, right? So what did they find out?
Let's see. They found out the 8 languages included each participant's native language, 3 others they learned later in life, and 4 unfamiliar languages. 2 of the unfamiliar languages were closely related to the participant's native tongue. For instance, Spanish for a native Italian speaker. The other 2 unfamiliar languages came from unrelated language families. All right, so they're kind of playing with that, like what I mentioned about how learning French was easier,
derivatives and
knowing
cognates.
Latin and English. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I know 2 words of Russian, maybe.
Okay.
Just because I read some Russian novels and I thought those are interesting words. I'll learn those.
Yeah.
I don't know if vodka is a Russian word, but
yeah, it sounds Russian.
Okay, but in any event, I wouldn't know any of the vocab.
Right.
But French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, Italian, because they're all related to Latin, quite easy by comparison.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
So, says Mesa next, the researchers found that when participants heard any of the 9 languages, blood always rushed to the same brain regions. Instead of using different parts of the brain, the participants' brains appeared to use the same basic network as monolinguals to try to, those would be the knuckle draggers like us, right? To try to make sense of the sounds regardless of which language they heard. The activity in the brain's language networks fluctuated based on how well participants understood a language. The more familiar the language, the larger the response. Brain activity particularly revved up when participants heard unfamiliar languages that were closely related to ones they knew well. Well, that just kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Stands to reason.
Right.
So can we find an analog? If you're listening to jazz, right, and suddenly you start listening to blues, you're not going to have a sense of familiarity. There's going to be some kind of a disjunct, right, in your thinking. Is that a good comparison?
I was thinking even at the top of this show, I was thinking about like the music that you listen to when you're younger and the stuff that sticks and that you're really drawn to. I wonder if that imprints on your brain in a similar kind of way.
It sure did for me because, I don't listen to anything after 1992.
Right. But I mean, that's an interesting comparison. So if you were to, listen to classic rock after having listened to some prog rock, would the brain kind of respond
like a breath of fresh air, Finally a melody I can discern.
Right, exactly. But would we see the brain respond in a similar kind of way?
Well, these are some of the arguments for baby Mozart and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
You gotta, and from what I can tell, I heard that has all been debunked.
I've heard that too.
That it was a terrible and silly experiment in commercializing, the time of infants, basically.
Yeah.
But what does Mesa say next?
So there was one exception to the rule. When participants heard their native tongue, their language networks were actually quieter than when they heard other familiar languages. The researchers reported last month in a preprint uploaded to the server BioRxiv, which hasn't been peer-reviewed. This trend held even when participants were fluent in their other familiar languages, suggesting that less brain power is needed to process languages learned early in life. So you kind of go on automatic mode.
Yeah, less brain power is needed to process languages learned early in life. That seems like just a very patent, observation. The longer you've known something, the less you have to think about it.
Right, the less your brain doesn't have to work as hard.
Correct. Yeah. So there's no one describes how you go about walking, but walking is very challenging for infants.
Yes.
It's a series of controlled falls, right?
Right.
Apparently running is much easier because you're leaping. It's a bunch of leaps and there's a different kind of balance.
Yeah.
But try to describe to someone how to walk, right? Well, put one foot forward and then quickly shift the weight onto the front foot and then pick up the back. It's a mess.
Right, exactly.
And if you try to think about it, like you try to think about driving, you're likely to hit something or fall down.
Yeah. You
have to get into that automatic mode, right? Where you're not thinking about
it. Or again, back with music, the muscle memory of playing an instrument. You often find that if I find myself like thinking too hard about what I'm doing, it's terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I try not to think too hard about anything. But the gentleman who's providing the music for the Gurgles and for Ad Nauseam these days, Jeff Sheets, he's quite unusual because he mastered the guitar at a very high level in a very short amount of time, something like 3 years. So not the 10-year rule of 3 hours per day.
Right.
So I don't know what accounts for that.
So I think Mr. Sheets is probably a musical equivalent of a hyper polyglot.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Who can just absorb it just really quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mesa says, this could be this phenomenon because expertise reduces the amount of brain power needed for a task, the researchers note. Previous studies have shown similar results in birders.
Birders?
Yeah, and used car salespeople asked to talk about familiar and unfamiliar topics. That's a strange combination. Vaughn Smith, the carpet cleaner, now we have birders and used car salespeople.
Yeah.
When you become a specialist at something, says Malik Moraleda, you use fewer resources. The study suggests reaching peak cognitive efficiency may be more likely when it's learned at a young age. Again, another kind of patent observation, wouldn't you say?
Right. I think, there is kind of, when you step back and think about kind of a well-duh type of response to this. But I get what the article is presenting, because I think there is a sense that I think most people think, well, if you're really good at something and you're a specialist in that something, when you're talking about that, your brain is at full power.
Yeah.
Right? You're using all your resources to talk about something you mastered, but they're actually saying, no, if this is imprinted on you when you're young and you've already mastered it for a long time, your brain isn't working as hard.
Yeah, and there's also, that's very well said, there's also something that is known as the expert gap. Have you heard this?
No, what's this?
Well, the more you know about something, the harder it is, the more difficult it is to understand the perspective of someone who doesn't.
Yes.
And I find this in my language teaching, which sounds very self-congratulatory and vain, and probably is a little bit so. But in some ways, I have a hard time thinking, okay, how can I explain the first declension? It's just clear as day.
Right, yes.
What else could I do? But I'm forgetting that at one time, this was really hard for me.
Yes.
So I think good teaching, that I strive for, and I know you do too, is to try to put yourself into the learner's perspective, which is very hard the more precise your own knowledge becomes.
Yeah, I just gave a midterm a few weeks ago, and 80% of the class bombed a particular section.
Right.
And so I actually was talking about in the class, and it came down to exactly what you're describing. It's like, for me, it was, how is this not just
obvious,
evident, right? And for them, it's just
music died, right, with Kurt Cobain.
Right?
That's the answer.
How can you not see that?
Exactly.
But no, it came down to that I was looking at it through the lens of someone who's just been doing this for so long.
Do you remember what it was?
It was they were identifying images on a slideshow, and they had to correlate it to the archaic era or the classical era.
Okay.
And so I was like, I could see a statue that from the Hellenistic era. I said, well, of course.
Right.
And they just didn't have that.
That's Praxiteles or someone like that. It's Myron, but they just couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it, and you know what? And they were right that my expectation was not great.
Yeah, there's another similar phenomenon. We got to wrap this up in a moment. That I've noticed. This is actually quite delightful in terms of expertise. And please don't think this is vain. Obviously, there are people who know a lot more Latin than I do, but when you're reviewing old material, here's the first declension again, here's the second declension here, and you notice something that you've never noticed before, right? So you learn something even after the 1,000th time that you have presented it. And sometimes it's because a student asks a question that you wouldn't think of because it is new to them.
Yeah.
Right? So some student says, well, why is the dative like that? And you think, well, I've presented this 2,500 times. I've never wondered.
Right.
That's a really good question.
Yes.
And then you can, in the moment, I don't know what the term would be, freestyle, like one of the soda machines.
Right.
You can come up with a plausible explanation that makes the routine a little more satisfying.
Yes.
Have you had that experience?
Oh, totally right. That's one of my favorite things about teaching is when a student comes in with one questions that, when you step back and think, why didn't I think about that? Why didn't I look at it from that angle?
Right. And it's not, I would understand that if this were the third, fourth, fifth time I've presented this particular material.
Yeah.
But number 17,000, my numbers are getting bigger, right?
Right.
I don't know why.
Right. Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yep.
Do you want to wrap up what she says in these last two paragraphs here? What a wonderful article by Ms. Mesa.
Yes. No previous study has studied so many polyglots. Quote, it's a very significant piece of work about polyglots, Buchwitz says. But because the results are purely descriptive, any conclusions about the work are still tentative. All right.
Okay.
So, don't get excited.
Yeah, don't run off.
That's right.
Try to, learn how to say hello in 50 languages at age 7 because it's not going to work.
Right. And then the final paragraph, many polyglots and hyperpolyglots deny any talent for language learning, Fedorenko says.
Now that is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I think there is that kind of that it's a kind of genius.
I guess.
Where your brain is a sponge and you can just do these things.
Well, I am not a polyglot by any stretch. I mean, in fact, the only language I speak really well sometimes is English.
Yeah.
But because of what I teach, and I'm sure it's the same for you, people often ask me, so how many languages do you know?
Yeah.
And I always start with English because I'm trying to throw them off, right?
Yes.
So, well, I know English pretty well. I speak Latin fairly well, Greek somewhat. And then here are the other ones I've studied, but I don't really know them.
Right.
They always assume, well, you must have a special knack for language.
Right. No.
And maybe I do a little bit, but not like these people.
No.
Right? There's something different.
There's something kind of innate. It reminds me I have a friend who has perfect pitch. Driving around with him, and then he'll hear a car horn. He'll go,
that's my son.
And he'll go B flat.
Correct.
Right. You can't. I don't think you can't teach that.
No,
right?
you can't.
This is something that is just how your brain works.
Yeah. Or the ambulance is going down the street, and I'll say to my son, "So what's that?" That's a D, maybe an E flat, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he'll say, "Oh no, it just changed." Right. Go
the Doppler effect. Right.
So I think language learning is more similar to that.
Yes.
So says Mesa. Still, she wants to investigate, referring to Fedorenko, how polyglots' brains pull off a trick that so many others find next to impossible, and whether they have an innate talent or just an interest or opportunity. You want the very last sentence?
Sure. Understanding what it takes for our brain to learn languages, she says, could one day lead to better tools to help people relearn languages more easily after a stroke or brain damage.
Well, that's nice.
So it kind of goes back to that, how very few of these hyperpolyglots have been studied,
right.
but the study of them could help people that have had problems with language retention or losing that ability.
Exactly. All right, Jeff, that's a Gurgle. That wraps it up.
Yeah, we got to get out of here.
Okay, so we do. So we'd like to thank our sponsors, Ratio Coffee. Go to ratiocoffee.com/adnauseum. The coupon code is ANRatio2025. You get $20 off your order.
Yes. Also, check out Hackett Publishing. That's hackettpublishing.com. If you put in the coupon code AN2025 on whatever you order, you get 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
And please go to dellachelpka.art, DELLACHELPKA.art, to find art that speaks to your story. Enter this coupon code,
Apelles, APELLES,
and get 10% off your entire order. Finally, if you want to learn Greek and Latin, you want to extend your language knowledge, please go to latinperdiem.com, enter the coupon code 10plus, 10PLUS, and you'll get 10% off anything on the website. Jeff, that's it. We're out of here.
That's it. Thanks for listening.